Welcome from all around the world. We are very honoured that Maria Hopwood's given us the opportunity today to interview Dr. Gary Samuelson. Also want to say thank you to Stevie Acolina, who's handling the Facebook Live. So that's on Gary Samuelson Facebook page. Feel free to put your supportive comments on the page, but refrain from asking any questions out of respect for Dr. Samuelson on his Facebook page. We are Bart and Melissa Kotter. We're from the Sunshine Coast in beautiful Australia. And hi Dr. Samuelson, it's great to see you. And yeah, Stevie refers to you actually as his hero. And I want to say that you are all of our heroes. And for those of you new on the webinar today, you'll understand more about that statement as you watch the webinar that we're going to go through today. So we may have time for Q&A at the end. We may not. We'll just see how we go with timing. So feel free to add your questions in the chat box and get back to the person who's invited you for any specific questions that you may have. So we want to make sure that your questions in the chat box are ASEA compliant, because only those ones will be read out. Mm-hmm. And as a disclaimer, we just need to say that ASEA's products are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure or prevent any disease or medical condition. So I wanted to tell you just a little bit about Dr. Samuelson before I hand it over to Bart. As many of you may know, Dr. Samuelson is an atomic medical physicist. He received his doctorate degree from the University of Utah, and he actually cross-specialised with the medical department and the physics department. So basically he's really, really intelligent and he knows what he's talking about. So that's a good cue to say, make sure you pay attention and listen, because this gentleman was able to create the impossible with his team of scientists, and he stabilised redox signalling molecules in a perfectly balanced set outside the body. And as many of you know, they're stabilised in some of ASEA's products. And Dr. Samuelson's going to talk a little bit about that today in terms of redox technology. But we wanted to also let you know that Dr. Samuelson is really driven by the dream that he really wants to see the day when the greatest scientific achievements are manifested and come to life for our benefit in this century. So we're totally excited for that too. And today our topic is redox biotechnology and micronutrition at the cellular level. So we're going to learn a lot. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm going to hand the time over to Bart.
Yeah. Look, in terms of a hero, he's certainly one of my heroes, Dr. Samuelson. It was a pivot point in my life when I met you when I came to Salt Lake City 4 years ago. So it was definitely a defining moment. You know, I know that there's a lot of people on the call today that are new. We've got health professionals, people that really may not know your background, and I guess in your experience. I guess first of all, you know, some people have asked, what exactly is an atomic medical physicist? Maybe you can share that with us and just kind of what led you to this field of study.
I've always been interested in science. That's about all my motivation is all about, besides the idea that we can apply knowledge for the good of people. And that's also very important. But I've always been interested in life. So, you know, what makes life tick? So when I was even before I was going through school and I was small, I wondered, you know, how we could figure out how life goes if you understand what happens inside a cell. I thought that would be great. Well, there's a lot of molecules in there, and you figure out what's happening inside the molecule. What's happening inside the molecules depends on how the atoms fit together. And I said, well, if I figure out how the atoms fit together, I can understand everything. Unfortunately, you know, you'd be surprised how you have the 6 types of major components that we have in our body as far as atomic spectra components are concerned, how many you can make. So I learned how the atom worked. And that's what atomic physicists do, basically. We study how atoms work, how they go together, how they form molecules, and how those molecules interact inside living organisms.
It's pretty fascinating. I've read your book, The Science of Healing Revealed, which really gets right into the basics of what how that works, how the healing works, and exactly how the cell. That's pretty interesting when you understand that these little molecules in in every cell of our body. Basically, they create these molecules within a millisecond. The body has to use them in that time. It's pretty amazing that you were even able that they could even discover these molecules in the first place, I suppose. We talked yesterday. I'd really like you to do just a little bit of an overview so that we have an understanding of the redox technology and how that works, and then we'll kind of move into the nutrition side of it. But do you have some? Could you share that with us? Yeah, I think you may have some slides to kind of just talk with us a little bit about what the redox molecules are and how they affect our health and our body.
I certainly do. I think that the slides would help present it a little bit better than I could just verbally. Hold on a minute. I'll share my screen. I hope everyone can see that.
We can.
Yeah.
Okay. Very well. The first point, getting right off with the presentation, our cells are machines. And that's one of the things that you start to recognize, that our cells are machines that have to operate according to the laws of physics, the laws of chemistry. All of these different types of organisms have been made out of cells, and each cell then has a bunch of components in it that have to function according to such laws, right? We also have idea of what a machine is. Here's a car engine, and every day we need to go into the store. We need to do some traveling. We use this machine to help us get around. What does this machine need in order to be able to function? What does a car need? How about that one? Gas.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of little bit important. The gas is the fuel that provides the energy that turns the engine. How about this? Oil. Oil helps lubricate everything so that it functions efficiently, doesn't rub together. Transmission fluid. I bet a lot of you have heard of some of these things, even though you might not know exactly how an engine works. Some of you might actually know how an engine works. How about antifreeze? Very important in the winter and in the summer too for cooling. How about power steering fluid? It's kind of important if you have power steering in your car. Grease also helps things move around. And brake fluid. Just like our engines in our car, our cells also need very essential materials in order to be able to function. What do you think that some of those are? How about that one? Oxygen. Sugars and polysaccharides, they produce the energy. They help produce the energy inside, just like the fuels inside the car. Fats also make up the little structures in the membranes of our cells. Proteins and amino acids make up these little micro machines that run around inside of our cells. I'm going to show you a little bit about these in a minute. Micronutrients also actually are the materials that build most of the structures and machines in our cell. Carotenoids and flavonoids are cofactors or important parts also of these nutrients that build the cell. Now I have a question for you. Suppose I were to take an engine and remove the gas. Would it function? Probably not. How about if I remove the oil? How about the oil? How about any of these components? So we might not know how an engine works, but we do know that in order to maintain our engine optimally, so it's functioning as it should, we need to provide it with certain materials and supplies. Just obvious. Absolutely the same for the cells. If we were to move the oxygen, that would be fairly bad. If we were to move, in fact, any of these elements by itself, that would be bad. Now, today in our modern agriculture, we depend upon the plants that grow out of the ground in order to provide us with these micronutrients. I forgot to put also minerals in here. Minerals are very important. Micronutrients that are needed for the cell to survive. Unfortunately, some of those micronutrients have been processed out of our foods as part of these processed foods. Also, those nutrients that used to be in foods that came from bacteria in the roots also now are deficient because insecticides and modern agricultural methods have killed the bacteria that produce these nutrients. And so our modern foods actually are deficient in many of these areas. Can we expect our cells then to be absolutely 100% efficient if they are missing some of these critical materials and supplies? And that's what I wanted to say a little bit about that. That's a, I hope, very clear picture. I'm going to show you a little bit now about what these little micro machines look like inside the cells. This comes from Harvard Medical School. I'll go through this video for you.
But these machines that power the inside of the cells are really quite amazing, and they really are the basis of all life, but because all of these machines interact with each other, they pass information to each other, they cause different things to happen inside the cell, and the cell will actually manufacture the parts that it needs on the fly from information that's brought from the nucleus by molecules that read the genes. And no life, from the smallest life to everybody here, would be possible without these little micro machines. In fact, it would really, in the absence of these machines, have made the attendance here, Chris, really quite sparse.
By the way, that is reduction when these things come together. That's oxidation when they come apart. That's reduction and oxidation.
Guy of the cell. This little guy is called a kinesin, and he pulls a sac that's full of brand new manufactured proteins to wherever it's needed in the cell, whether it's to a membrane, whether it's to an organelle, whether it's to build something or repair something. And each of us has about 100,000 of these things running around right now inside each one of your 100 trillion cells. So no matter how lazy you feel, you're not really intrinsically doing nothing. So what I want you to do when you go home is think about this and think about how powerful our cells are, and think about some of the things that we're learning about cellular mechanics. And once we figure out all that's going on, and believe me, we know almost 1% of what's going on. Once we figure out what's going on, we're really going to be able to have a lot of control over what we do with our health, with what we do with future generations, how long we're going to live. And hopefully we'll be able to use this to discover more truth and more beauty.
Now I want you to look at this a little bit. These little guys are just about to be oxidized. This is important to understand what redox is all about, by the way. There goes the signaling molecules.
These micro machines are aware enough of what the cell needs that they do their bidding. They work together, they make the cell do what it needs to do, and their working together helps our bodies, huge entities that they will never see, function properly.
I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you were able to see it and appreciate some of the things that take place in our cell.
That was a great video for us to really, truly appreciate what goes on without our knowledge, because we put a lot of things in our body that we don't realize our machines have to deal with. So that was a phenomenal analogy. Thanks so much for sharing that, Dr. Samuelson.
I love how you've got the ability to make the complex very understandable. The perfect example too. It's amazing what happens in every one of those 75 trillion cells in our body.
Yeah, well, did you see some of those proteins moving around
Yes.
and doing their functions and such? We saw some of the DNA or RNA creating proteins in the cell. All of those molecules that we saw that are proteins made out of amino acids, which are essential nutrients that come from proteins, right? And then there are many of the others are made out of the different essential nutrients that we were talking about before. So in order to build a cell, if we were going to build one, we need the DNA, we'd need the micronutrient supplies, and we need energy to make everything work. And then we'd also need something else that is very important, and these are the messengers. They're the ones that read the DNA, that know what's happening inside the cell, and pass that information to the workers, and the workers then coordinate all the information and activity that's happening inside the cell to make it possible to build and maintain all of the structures that are inside the cell. How fascinating is that? Now, we need to have a perfect balance, or a balance of everything inside our working cells, in order to be able to have health. And I wanted to go through one of the molecules that's needed. It's called oxygen. Oxygen is also the father of the redox signaling molecules that I'm going to be talking about. Reduction and oxidation basically means that these atoms get or receive or give electrons. Oxygen is really great at grabbing and stealing electrons. It will oxidize molecules in its neighborhood. When it oxidizes it, it also becomes reduced. That's the language. Reduced means that it obtains an electron. So this happens at the same time the oxygen obtains an electron, the same time that it steals an electron from another molecule. So it's called redox, or reduction oxidation. And these are the things that take place inside of our body. When oxygen is reduced, when it gains more electrons, it changes, it transforms into a superoxide anion. These are one of the redox signaling molecules. Transforms into peroxide, which is like hydrogen peroxide. This is another one of the redox signaling molecules. If it gains another electron, it transforms into hydroxyls and very reactive species. And at the very end, it transforms into water. Water is the most reduced form of the oxygen molecule. So we take, when we breathe in a deep breath of air, we take in a lot of oxygen. And inside our metabolism, that oxygen is transformed through all of these redox signaling molecules back into water. And plants then can take that water, do the reverse transformation, and turn it into oxygen. So that's the oxygen cycle in our world. You know, plants turn it into oxygen, and then we turn it back into water. But the intermediate steps, you know, that create these reactive oxygen species, or these redox signaling molecules, is very important inside of our body. About 90% of the oxygen that we breathe goes into our mitochondria. Our mitochondria produces the fuel we need, along with all of these other elements, nutrients, I wanted to point out, water, and this comes from sugars. It creates the fuel that all of these machines need, this mitochondria, and also produces these reactive oxygen species, which were these intermediate transformations of oxygen inside your cell. We have learned that these intermediate species of oxygen, which are, by the way, eliminated by antioxidants like glutathione inside of our cells, serve a very important signaling role. If they're perfectly in balance, then it signals a healthy cell. If they become imbalanced and more oxygen species, reactive oxygen species, builds up, it's an oxidative stress. This pushes the buttons that are needed for the cell to repair itself. Sort of like the fire alarm. if you want to think of it. The smoke comes out, the fire alarm goes off, the cell says there's something wrong and starts to repair itself. These reactive oxygen species also, which are the redox signaling molecules, can stimulate the repair and replace process inside of our bodies. They stimulate, in fact, they cause repair and replacement of damaged cells everywhere in our body where there is an imbalance of the oxidation. The cells bring it back into balance. There's a delicate balance, says James Watson. He also discovered the DNA between the two. Physical exercise prompts the body to make large numbers of oxidants, which are the redox signaling molecules called reactive oxygen species. It helps forge chemical bonds which stabilize the proteins as they fold. Did you see the proteins unfolding? That's an oxidation process. It needs to be oxidized in order to move. If we didn't have oxidation inside our body, none of those molecules would be able to move or reattach, which is reduction. So all of the molecules coming apart and coming back together is an oxidation reduction process. And it is mediated by these redox signaling molecules are inside of our cells. Now, no one can say that oxidants are bad. The oxidants are extremely necessary. The important part is that they are balanced inside of our body. There are a bunch of journals and everything else that explain how these things work inside of our body. The science is growing worldwide. Very exciting and interesting things. We learn inside this literature that antioxidants are not the heroes. Just they just play their part, just like me. Oxidants are not the little devils, the evil people. They also just play their part. I'm not reading any moral value into this. Okay. But
certainly different than what we've been taught. Oxidants are good, or antioxidants are good, and oxidants are bad. So
yes, that's correct. What we need to learn, though, Bart, is that absolutely every process in our body requires the cooperation of antioxidants and oxidants inside our cells to be able to carry on these processes of life. They need to be perfectly balanced and working together. If they are not, the cell actually will destroy itself. It'll kill itself and be replaced by division of other healthy cells around. Cells that have become too damaged send off redox signaling signals and kill themselves before they can spread the damage. So, here's a really fun little thing that I like to do for redox signaling to show. A lot of us know that when we cut off a tadpole tail that it can regenerate completely. Here are some scientists, here's that have cut off the tadpole tail, and they're measuring the reactive oxygen species or redox signaling molecules densities inside the regenerating tail. The reds and the yellows represent redox signaling molecules. Notice how they, in the process of regeneration, they are very prevalent. There are high concentrations of them. Once the tail is regenerated, all of a sudden these reactive oxygen species go away. And so the scientists thought, well, is it that reactive oxygen species or redox signaling molecules are needed for regeneration, for cellular regeneration? They did the experiment again, and they took out the redox signaling molecules by using very potent antioxidants. I think they used vitamin C or some other substances, DMSOs. And notice that the tail did not regenerate. So without these molecules, it made the regeneration of the tail absolutely impossible. So we realized that these redox signaling molecules are required for tissue generation, and they participate fundamentally in the regeneration and repair and replacement of all cells in all organisms on Earth, including plants, animals. So it's quite neat. In fact, it's even better to know that we have been able to take these perfectly balanced sets of redox signaling molecules, put them in a bottle, and yeah, Bart has it. The bottle of ASEA, it contains these perfectly balanced redox signaling molecules, have absolutely no harm. They're biocompatible, and yet they are so very active in helping our cells detect, repair, and replace damage. They also are active in helping us to protect ourselves through antioxidants. They make the antioxidants more potent that are naturally produced in our cells. So this is the reason why I'm here. This is just fascinating. It's fascinating that something so bioactive in nature can be so biocompatible and bioavailable to our bodies that it can act as it should. Is it all right, Bart, if I just give some scientific results on this?
Oh yeah, please do. And you know, I was just going to interject, if you don't mind. I was just going to say that to stabilize these molecules, I mean, the University of Utah, I mean, if I understand correctly, there were people pounding fists on the table saying it was impossible. It couldn't be done. But that's the miracle that we've got, is these molecules being stabilized outside the body in perfect balance. And you know, there's been literally millions and millions of dollars and many years of research that's been put into doing that. So you're the one that's created the miracle and being able to figure out how to stabilize. So we'd love to hear some of the trials, definitely.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, when Virtus, by the way, first introduced this to me and I saw the scientific results, I was the one pounding my hand on the table saying, this is impossible. You can't have those molecules. They don't exist in stable form. And learned later on that they were indeed stable, and also they were indeed the redox signaling molecules. I was the one that identified them as redox signaling molecules in the body. So anyway, what do these redox signaling molecules do? What do the reactive active oxygen species do? They kill bacteria, 100% of them. Over 30 of the resistant strains we've tried, yet they have no ill effects on the beneficial flora and microbiome in our gut. We're going to be talking a little bit about that in a second. No inflammatory markers stimulated. Antioxidant efficiencies increased. Kill rates only in damaged cells. It accelerates, helps the body to kill the damaged cells that can't be repaired. Increases sensitivity to hormones and reverses cell aging. These are some of the results that we've seen. It opens the detox channels, detoxification channels, activates stem cell adhesion for the regeneration of tissue, and it's key to help the cells regenerate. And some of the genetic studies that we have run show that the genes that are touched are actually those which help cells to regenerate and enzymes to become more effective. In animals, there was an increase in endurance of mice. They could run 29% longer. It was kind of a joke in the lab that, you know, we have to give it to the cats in the lab. Increased available energy reserves also. The metabolism shifts that we saw, and increased antioxidant efficiencies, increased, and zero adverse effects again were seen in any case over 23 years of clinical studies we have never seen even one case of an adverse effect. And we have also seen around the world tens of thousands of reports now of benefits that from this. And I get more and more every day. I probably am the most fortunate man in the world. I get to see how this is spreading throughout the world. On top of that, it actually makes you look more beautiful. The Renew 28 repairs your skin cells, repairs wrinkles, blotches, helps to increase the smoothness and texture, repairs the collagen that makes the skin elastic. It helps increase hydration of the skin. Here are some of the very famous now pictures of this. It increases the blood flow to the skin. It decreases cellulite globules. It increases the rate of the cellular regeneration process significantly, up to about 16%. In other words, it helps your skin regenerate and repair itself. It's exactly what it does inside the body too, when you drink it. So we have the Renew 28 that is great for external or topical applications. It absorbs into your skin. And then we have the liquid ASEA, Redox, which is taken orally and it gets into your system. So I'm gonna. This is about where I switch gears and go into nutrition. So is there anything that you wanted to add in?
I was just going to quickly say, for those new on the webinar today, that it's a concentrated form of these redox signaling molecules in a gel as well, which is a topical application, which is for specific sort of areas of damage on the skin. So just to clarify again, as Dr. Samuelson was saying, we've got the ASEA liquid supplement with the molecules. We have Renew 28, which is a topical whole body use gel, and also a concentrated serum full of trillions of these stabilized molecules as well.
So what's also important to kind of realize is that the ASEA, that we've been talking about here, these molecules, there's no vitamins, there's no minerals in these. This is like the cellular communication. This is the thing that creates the communication between the cells, and that's what leads us into what's so important too, is what you had already talked about, the components that's needed in that engine, which is the micronutrients and the minerals and so forth. So ASEA, if you think of it this way, I've heard it said that it's like the head of the spring. Everything else is downstream from there, and it's also kind of important to realize that when we actually realize that we're not well, our bodies have been, moving down that path of being unwell for some time.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, it's sort of like a car that doesn't have good oil in it. If your oil is not working, the car will work, the engine will turn over and function, but over time, it will wear down, and it'll wear down faster.
It's funny on that note. In fact, I think it was just yesterday, I saw this little post that someone went in and they went into an auto mechanics store. They wanted to find out if they had a longer dipstick for their oil because the oil wasn't reading on their dipstick properly.
There wasn't enough oil in there, and I think really that's what you're transitioning into in the sense of the integrity of the cell is dependent upon the nutrition that's present in the cell for the labor, which is the redox signaling molecules, to put that cellular nutrition to work. So that's the crossover which Dr. Samuelson's going to talk about now into the ASEA VIA range of supplements that ASEA has recently launched, which completes the other half of the story with the materials being needed in the cells. So thank you, Dr. Samuelson.
That's right. This isn't the cure-all for everything. It's the messenger, and you need to have all the right stuff in there along with it. So you don't need a longer dipstick.
Absolutely. And these workers won't be able to do anything if they don't have the materials. You can bring everybody out to your work site and say, okay, we're all connected. We've got our radios. We have our cell phones. Let's go. And if we don't have the materials, these are absolutely inefficient. So the nutrients absolutely are needed. Where do we find these nutrients? Well, we find them in foods. In fact, there are more than just one types of sugar. Of course, there are more types of starches. There's all sorts of fatty acids and lipids and such in all of the types of foods. And these components are essential for the energy that is created in our body to reconstruct our tissue, to construct our cell structures and such, apart from the workers, you know. And so providing these materials for the workers inside our cell is part of health. I mentioned before that we don't have some of the nutrients or many of the nutrients inside of our foods. And so that we need to supplement then these nutrients in order for the cells to work properly and efficiently. Some of the ones that I want to mention today, and there's a little bit of a problem here with the slide, but is the minerals are important for conduction of our nervous system. And without lithium, calcium, magnesium, selenium, copper, and all of these, our nervous system and also our brain chemistry can be unbalanced. This causes quite a bit of problems. Not to worry, though, there are natural formulations that are in nature that are able to accumulate these same minerals in natural foods. In the soil, for example, bacteria accumulates these minerals. There are other safe sources of minerals everywhere. In the ASEA via source, they also use they use yeast. And yeast living organisms, they pull out the nutrients from the different components, which is great. This helps to bioaccumulate and these things so that we have enough of them. There's also these micronutrients. There's sugars, amino acids, saturated and unsaturated fatty acids. We get a lot of those from our foods. Minerals that we mentioned before, vitamins, carotenoids, and flavonoids. I wanted to mention also that the body as a machine, the cell as a machine in the system, is not designed to use nutrients that are not in their natural form. Now I'm going to say this again. Our digestive system is not designed to use nutrients unless they are in their natural form. The nutrients inside our foods come with cofactors, glycoproteins, and all sorts of other baggage that is needed in order to be able to carry the nutrients properly into our body and then assure that they get to the places where they are needed. This is a cute little slide. If we want to build an elephant, we use herbs. We use leaves and straw. You can build an elephant, you can build a dinosaur, you can build anything with just vegetables. And so don't argue with an elephant if vegetables are not healthy for you, are not able to create the elements, the natural elements inside these vegetables are exactly what we need in order to build our body. The food particles that are broken down inside of our digestive system are represented by this whole glob of different shapes here. There's different micronutrients and minerals and such inside of these food particles. Enzymes, there are billions of them in these particles. Enzymes then get active and break down these micronutrients into the smaller forms, perfect to be able to be filtered into the body. Stuff that isn't natural, the body tries to keep out. In fact, some of the drugs that we use these days have to be in such large concentrations because our liver and our intestinal filters try to keep the drugs out of our system. And so we have to overpower these filters in order to get enough drugs into the system. It's a little scary. But if everything is working perfectly, then these make it into the blood, and then they're used to construct the systems and tissues inside of our body. And that's how we digest the nutrients. Again, only natural nutrients with their cofactors, which can be flavonoids and such, will attach to these nutrients and make them bioavailable or available to our body. They make it into our blood and into our cells.
Dr. Samuelson, sorry, a quick question. So would it be accurate to say that the quality of a nutritional line really is dependent upon the absorption or the bioavailability factor of it being able to be used by the body?
Absolutely. You know, I mean, is a nutrient any good if it's not able to make it in?
No, not at all. And I think that's a distinctive factor when looking at ASEA's nutritional line, because it's been designed specifically around and targeting 100% the bioavailability to enhance that in the body. Like, for example, in Source, and I won't go off on this tangent for too long because I know you're doing a presentation, but in Source, the blend's been changed slightly so it can maximize the increase in the bioavailability of a couple of digestive enzymes from 4 times to 6 times. So they've really focused on that. That's just one example from one of the products.
And there are so many nutritional lines that are loaded with synthetic vitamins that aren't from the natural sources.
That the gastrointestinal tract can't use, we've just learned. So thanks, Dr. Samuelson.
You know, absolutely. And it'll try to throw those out. There's another very inventive thing that Source has done, or they have done to the Source vitamins, and that is using a glycoprotein ferment, which means they partially digest some of these, you know, they ferment, partially digest some of the glycoproteins, which make it easier for the body to pull them in and break them down again.
I think too, the fructooligosaccharides in the biome does exactly that type of thing with the Jerusalem artichoke. So it ferments it, it breaks it down so it can go through the body and be used lower down in the gastrointestinal tract. Is that correct?
That's fairly accurate, yeah. Yeah, maybe you can mention, Melissa, some of the elements that are in a biome and LifeMax.
Yes, so, that's a great idea. So the ASEA range, they've got 3 products right now. There's ASEA Via Source, which is the whole food-based micronutrient supplement. We've been learning about micronutrients from Dr. Samuelson this morning and their importance in the machine of the cell. And then there is Biome, which is a full-spectrum probiotic. It also contains 16 probiotic strains and just 1 prebiotic for the Australian market, 3 in the US market. And we have marshmallow root in Australia in place of slippery elm in the United States. And then there's LifeMax, which is a brilliant lifestyle, a cellular lifestyle supplement to support our active lives and the stress on the cellular level. And it's precisely formulated with 16 distinctive plants as well. And it's all focused really, as I said, all 3 of these products are focused specifically to working with redox signaling molecules to make the labor easier on the body. And also it's targeting specific areas that I think Dr. Samuelson, you'll cover on in some of these slides with some of those aspects. So it really is targeting the integrity of the cellular health to maximize the bioavailability for the nutrition to be in the cell for redox. Is that, please feel free to add anything to that. That's just a general summary, Dr. Samuelson.
Oh no, yeah, well, I also want to mention that natural bioavailable minerals from red algae are also being used inside the Source product, which are very important also for bioavailability to, in that sense. You know, and also there's holy basil, lemon, and guava in the LifeMax. What do you think, by the way, what do you think these basil, lemon, and guava have inside them?
I would stab a guess and say antioxidants, but I just a guess.
Yes. Yeah, antioxidants. They also have the fuels, like the gas.
Oh, right.
Yeah, the natural fruits that we have, like the pomegranates and such. They have vitamin B complexes actually inside those things, which are great. But they also have, a full complement of the vitamin B. Superfoods, by the way, are foods that have full complements of all of these micronutrients in them that we've mentioned. So,
I was going to say, interestingly, on the superfood, they're growing mushrooms on blue or purple corn, which have anthocyanins, which are blue from blue plants, which really magnifies the antioxidant availability of, and the superfood content, really. That is a superfood, the purple corn, is that correct?
Oh, yeah. Well, I think you know almost more about that than I do. That is correct. But these things also have a lot of energy in them. They have fructose, they have the polysaccharides, and they have a lot of the other ones. We have fructose and lactose and galactose. Many different types of polysaccharides which are needed inside our body too, and they're needed for energy. And a lot of the foods that we have refined sugars that are just the sucrose type, and from beets and cane, and they don't have all of these good sugars that come from fruits and berries. So could mention that.
Well, the trace minerals you mentioned earlier too. So from your scientific perspective, I mean, our soils in Australia, I studied a soil chemistry degree 30 years ago, and this is probably the only time I've used it. But I was going to say, I know back then our soils in Australia were 2/3 depleted, completely leached of the minerals that we need, and particularly the trace minerals. So we cannot get that in Australia. We have to supplement trace minerals, because here we are 30 years down the track and our soils haven't improved necessarily, looking across the continent that we have. So in terms of the cellular level, trace minerals are really just needed in minute amounts, but are you able to expand on their role in the cellular level at all, why we need them?
Well, I mentioned where they're needed in the nervous system. But these trace minerals are the components that make up our antioxidants. They're the center of these redox reactions. So they're the semaphores also for redox signaling interactions. So if we don't have the semaphores, the signaling molecules are not able to pass the message or regulate themselves. So these trace minerals, like selenium, magnesium, absolutely important for redox signaling to take place in our body.
Thanks for clarifying that, because you mentioned the algae before, and I know that they've really used land trace minerals as well that are specific in these ASEA, in the product.
One thing that's impressed me is that they've gone to painstaking detail to make sure that the products, what's in this is the best of the best. And the other thing is that like a lot of companies, they'll just dust it with different, the alphabet of the vitamins, just enough so that they can put it on the label. Whereas in these products, there's enough of everything that's in there that it would have a substantial effect to the body and actually give you the benefit, not just be able to stick it on the label as saying it's in there.
No, okay. Well, I just wanted to give you a bunch of pictures to end this off, and then we can just do what you feel is good for the end part. Our cardiovascular system, made out of cells. Endocrine system, as a messaging system. Every aspect of hormonal transmission involves redox signaling and also nutrients. Did you know that most of our hormones are made out of polysaccharides, sugars? Did you know that trees are made out of sugars? You know,
No idea.
wood fibers are sugar molecules in different formation. Yeah, our skin, of course, made out of cells, and that we mentioned that before. Lungs, redox signaling, incredibly important for lungs, for our digestive system, all of the cells that help to absorb the nutrients in our system. We've got to heal our gut first in order to be able to absorb nutrients. Current nervous system research, by the way, shows that redox balance is absolutely critical. Let me add on to that trace minerals. We have to have those. And so I believe that these technologies, along with redox signaling technology, which of course is my field of expertise, is going to fuel the greatest advances of science in this century. So there we go. That was a presentation. Now we can chat about it a bit if you wish.
Oh, that's fantastic. Thank you. That was really clear.
It was actually fascinating, and I've learnt so much already from what you've been speaking about. And the image I have in my mind is definitely the tadpoles. That was a great example. So thanks for sharing that with us. And I noticed when I was doing a comparison, when I was looking at ASEA via source and biome and life maps, there are certain themes that are really repeated across the range. And you may be able to shed some light on the fact that what's repetitively mentioned as benefits for each of these products really is the effects on inflammation, curbing inflammation. And by the way, none of these statements I'm about to make are FDA approved. I'm just having a casual chat about it. So in terms of the improve inflammation before it becomes chronic, there's also a common theme of mental well-being, mental health. Also, there's the common theme of cardiovascular health, which obviously we know is extremely important, and assimilation, as well as the benefits for stress. So that's just generally speaking, but do you have any comments on those areas of health and why these products are targeted for those benefits?
Yeah, I wanted to refocus a little bit on redox signaling in those areas. Redox signaling molecules are probably some of the best anti-inflammatories that have ever existed because they actually work on the cellular level. Antioxidants that we get in our foods also help for inflammatory effects. But again, the redox signaling molecules without the trace minerals that I mentioned before are not very effective for creating antioxidant effects. Well, you know, just adding on a little, you know, interesting piece here. You know, the balance is the thing that is most important inside of our cells. If the redox signaling system is in balance, then when there's inflammation, it'll reduce the inflammation. When there are other deficiencies, it'll raise the deficiencies. That's what keeps everything in life working. That when something gets out of kilter, the body knows how to correct itself. Without the redox signaling, it can't correct itself. You get into chronic conditions. Without proper nutrition, also, you don't have the materials and supplies, you can't build a house, you can't repair your structures. And those type of things also will cause chronic problems over time. And you can imagine. So, you know, as part of this also is getting the balance right, getting the balance of these things right. We need to eat less sugars. We need to eat more nutrients. You get on your plate, for example, if you look on your plate and all you see is white and brown, which are meats and sugars or carbs, it's not good because it's missing all of the micronutrients that we were talking about, all of the supplies. So you might be giving the cells a lot of energy. You might be giving them, you know, the proteins they need to build themselves, but you're not giving them any of the supplies. So have you ever tried to build a house without, you know, the proper supplies? You know, you can't do it. And it's the same way with the cells. So you need a proper amount. If you get too much sugars, it's really, really bad. The body has to put them away as fats. If you get too little of the proteins or incorrect balance of amino acids, it can throw the whole thing out of kilter, you know. So that little part is, for me, maybe one of the most important things. You got to have the correct balance of these things in your body.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know until today that 90% of the oxygen we breathe in is needed in the mitochondria, and really how important exercise is too in terms of increasing our capacity for dealing with oxygen, or needing oxygen for the body. So that was really interesting. I hadn't thought of it that way. So in terms of, you know, deep breathing, or in terms of just how we live our lives, it's going to have an impact in the mitochondria, and then the mitochondria's ability to produce these molecules, which is really why we even more so need to supplement with these molecules.
Can I mention one other thing, Melissa, at the very end here? I think that we kind of left off the microbiome part. We haven't really given it all of that it deserves.
Good point.
You know, our body is made out of cells. Each cell has about 20,000 genes, and those 20,000 genes produce 20,000 proteins, or little micro machines inside there. And some of those are broken down in others, so we may be able to create maybe 100,000 different types of little micro machines from our own genes. But the bacteria inside of our body have more than 2 million genes. And if you have a good variety of bacteria in your gut, they're producing the types of machines and micronutrients that we cannot produce for ourselves. They're also helping digest our foods. And so, you know, it's kind of interesting. We need 260,000. We use 260,000 of these little micro machines inside of our body. And we before, you know, are something around those numbers. The numbers vary depending on, you know, who says them. But we an awful lot more than can be accounted for just by our own human cells. So basically, you know, most of the nutrients and things that we absolutely can absorb come from the bacteria inside our gut. If the bacteria is not there, if we've taken antibiotics or something like that, and then we can have problems, serious problems, that we can't digest nutrients. So I should mention that too. I hope that, you know, that's also very, very clear. We're mostly bacteria. As far as our makeup it goes, you know, a lot of it is due to the bacteria.
And the biome supports the beneficial bacteria, so it really supports the gastrointestinal tract. I know that for people who may not know a lot about probiotics, previously the school of thought was you take a couple of strains, you put billions of those, just 2 strains, for example, into a probiotic, and then they're used as a belly bomb. So they're hoping that they're going to go and do the job. But as you've described, there's so many different bacteria whose job is not essentially the same. They really have specific jobs depending upon where they are in the gastrointestinal tract as well. So ASEA has designed the biome range to be full spectrum, to really take care of each of the bacteria so that they can more effectively do their job. Would that be an accurate way of describing it?
Well, that is very, very good. Yes. You can think of the bacteria in your gut as living on a field. And you have to be able to fertilize the field in order to be able to grow the bacteria that is needed. So, you know, the biome, I think, has almost the best effect that the biome has, is that it regenerates, or it creates, or it contains the nutrients that are needed to grow the helpful bacteria. The 16 in the United States of the probiotics that you have, and then the 3 prebiotics that are used, etc., are nothing compared to the tens of thousands of bacteria varieties that are in the gut. You know, we need a lot of them. But the nutrients that they grow on, that they need, are very important. So these prebiotics are extremely important to be able to nourish the bacteria that we have in our gut. And so, that's really cool. If I want to mention that if you really want to get a good probiotic, go out into nature, garden, get your hands in the soil, smell that beautiful loamy smell. Those are exactly the type of probiotics that are in nature that you need, and then along with the prebiotics, will help the system to grow what it needs inside.
Well, I know, thank you for sharing that with us, because we've been on Source for a little longer, but Biome and LifeMax last 6 weeks. I usually, to be honest with you, don't notice a heck of a lot from nutritional supplements. I just never have, other than sometimes I open the bottle and they make me feel sick. But I've got to say, in terms of the results that we've been getting with the gastrointestinal tract working the way it's supposed to, with energy, vitality, and mental clarity, we're absolutely noticing it. And that's just not us. I'm sure you're hearing reports from people even more than we are in terms of, what's happening with this range, with stories of people's health. One thing I just wanted to comment on too, which is important to do LifeMax justice. One of the attributes or benefits of LifeMax is it helps to promote healthy cell division in the body. And with what you've spoken about before, with the apoptosis, with the cell needing to kill itself, etc., how important is healthy cell division in the body to have something to target that?
Absolutely. And all cellular regeneration depends on having the materials and supplies and signaling necessary to divide our cells and make new cells. Yeah, I mean, well, our guts are regenerated about every all of the tubes in our intestines are regenerated about every 7 days. So you can imagine just the volume of cellular regeneration that we're undergoing every day.
There's a very dear friend of ours that she's 80 years old, and she said she's really quite healthy and vibrant, and she says, "I'm healthy by choice, not by chance." I just love that quote, and I've always appreciated your whole holistic approach to health, and it's not just about one product. It's not just about drinking ASEA that's going to be the fix-all, for example, but it's really getting out to nature. It's the thoughts we think. It's hiking in the woods. It's, like you said, putting your hands in the soil, eating the right things. When you go in the grocery store, you can pretty much match up what's in people's shopping cart with kind of how they look and what their health is. And if they're carrying an oxygen mask with them as they go through the grocery store, you can probably assume what's in their cart as well. So just overall, I know you've got a lot of experience in this area, and probably goes without saying, but from your experience, how would you rank the nutrition line that ASEA has put together here?
I think it's A+. It's a very good nutrition line. You certainly have a lot of great nutritional products out there. They've been out there for a long period of time. Very few of them actually put together all of the elements that are needed in one place. And so, ASEA did a really good job, I feel, finding the nutritional lines and the technologies that are necessary in order to support us. I'm not going to talk against any other company, et cetera. I know some of them do have excellent products, but this is an altogether, one source type of a product.
Oh, I think you've really nailed it there. ASEA has made our life really easy with the redox molecules, with the nutrition line. I wrote down as you were talking, we started off with saying you're our hero, and hopefully people now can see through this webinar what you've done for society and what you've done for each of us. And I wrote down that really the best way for us to thank you is to take personal responsibility for our health and use the right labor and use the right nutrition, as well as the other things that you've mentioned, to improve our lives, to be healthier and have better happy, smiling cells, which I know you've said you've looked down the microscope before, and the cells are smiling at you. So I just figure that that's the best way that we can really thank you, by taking personal responsibility for our health. And of course, some people will take responsibility for this information and some won't, and that's okay. It's not going to go away. These molecules are a piece of the future that got here early thanks to you. And same with this nutrition line. So we feel truly blessed with the knowledge that you've imparted amongst all of us globally. I know you get, I dare say, hundreds and hundreds or plus thank you cards and emails, and just the most amazing feedback based on what you've done for society, for humanity, and for each of us. So we're incredibly grateful for you and Iris and all that you do for us. Thank you for your information today. And for people who want more specific information on ASEA via nutrition line, there's product information sheets in the virtual office. The Australian market's still getting that uploaded, but get together with the person who invited you to get more specific information on that. And I'm not sure if you want to wrap up or if you've got anything more you would like to say.
I'd just like to say thank you as well. This has actually been so much great information. If you like what you've heard and seen, you know, this is recorded, but you can always go to Dr. Samuelson's Facebook page as well and share that as well, because it's been recorded in that place. I know that there was a comment, is this recorded? Look, we just are extremely grateful. Thank you so much for your time and for everything that you've done. You know, together we can all change the world, and let's do it.
Thank you. Thank you for all of you.
Thank you, Dr. Samuelson. Because we've gone over a little bit of time, feel free to put your chat questions that are compliant on Dr. Samuelson's Facebook page, which is Gary Samuelson Facebook. Thank you again to Maria Hopwood for this opportunity for us to be chatting with Dr. Samuelson today, and Stevie Aquilina for running the Facebook side of things. And thank you all from around the world for joining us today. So we'll keep you posted on the next webinar with Dr. Samuelson, and be sure to get his book, The Science of Healing Revealed, as well. It explains it in a very layman's terms for each of us to understand what he's been talking about today. So,
and order your ASEA.
It works.
Yeah, it's good stuff.
Thanks so much, Dr. Samuelson. Thanks everybody.
Okay.
Bye.
Cheers.
Good night.
Good night.